Hey guys, you're listening to Metal Matters, a weekly Gimme Radio podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hill. If you like metal, punk, hardcore, or anything extreme, you've come to the right place. So subscribe and never miss out. Some of my favorite episodes are the ones where creative admiration and friendship meet. This week's episode is one such episode. We have Trevor Shelley DeBrauw of Pelican on this week. And I've been friends with Trevor for probably, close to 10 years. Our bands have toured together. I've been a fan of Pelican since before I knew Trevor. And they've been around since 2001, I believe their first album came out. So it's coming on 20 years. And they have a new record coming out on Southern Lord called Midnight Stories. The release date is June 7th. In the year of our Lord, 2019. Anyway, Trevor and I get into the record. We talk about his other bands, such as RLYR, his solo record, and then we delve into sort of philosophical discussions about veganism and the consumption of meat. Anyway, it was a really good episode. For those of you who enjoy the show and you want to hear more non-music related topics, I've got back on the horse with Everything Went Black. That's my other podcast. I've been putting out a couple of new episodes recently. You can find Everything Went Black on iTunes and pretty much everywhere else. If you want to get at me on social media, the two main platforms for me are Facebook, and I'm Michael Hill on Facebook, and Instagram. And Instagram is Michael_DC_Hill. And I noticed a couple people have tried to follow me, so that's great. And welcome aboard. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share, give us an iTunes review, star ratings. And if you don't feel like doing any of that stuff, tell your friends about it, and maybe they can listen to the show. Trevor, it's been a minute. So
yeah.
What have you been up to these last few years?
Well, when was the last time I saw you? You came to see RLYR at St. Vitus, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was, our first album, or was that our second time through?
That was your very first time through, because that's
okay.
Yeah, and the record had just come out, and I commented on how there was like a real heavy duty krautrock thing going on. What you guys are doing?
Yeah, I suppose there was. There probably still is to a certain degree. So since then, I wrote and recorded another RLYR record with that band, and then that would have been like when we were in the middle of writing this new Pelican record that's coming out.
Right.
And then I've just been working, and I had just had a kid 2 months ago, the second kid. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a whole mess of projects going on is what it boils down to.
And you forgot about your solo project that came out.
Is that since then?
Yeah, because I interviewed you for, I think it was Bandcamp Daily. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was the last time we actually spoke, but the last time I saw you was at that RLYR show. So
God, yeah, I'm sorry. I just keep throwing records into the world.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, it works for me.
Yeah,
I can't stop making them, so I just feel fortunate that there are people that are willing to invest money in having them manifest in some sort of capacity where other people can hear them too.
So there's a new Pelican record that's just about getting ready to be released when this the episode of this show is going to go live. It's going to be the eve of the new Pelican record.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So the record's about to come out.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk in the present tense in the future.
We're going to talk in the present tense in the future. Yeah, that's like a paradox, But yeah.
It's coming out in like 3 weeks, but to you person listening, it's coming out next week. Or if you're listening to this podcast further into the future, it came out already.
Exactly. That's the kind of stuff I want to say. Like these sort of like time is like a flattened circle kind of all things like time is like a continuum. That's the kind of vibe I want to have on this show,
Yeah.
So
I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it when I was because I was working on the laundry before we connected this call.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the laundry room and I was thinking about how recording a podcast is kind of like recording a record, because now this is a thing that exists in the world that people will listen to and so there's higher pressure. So I need to apologize if I'm not going to live up to the pressure.
Nah, man, there's no pressure. I mean, it's there's literally thousands upon thousands of these out there, and it's sort of like the analogy of if you see one cat in a room, you're like, oh, what a cute little kitty cat we have here. But if there was like 200 cats in your room, you would be kind of annoyed by the cats, I think. So that's kind of how podcasts are, I feel.
Have you ever seen that YouTube clip of like the room full of cats and it looks like they're circle pitting because it's been set to an Integrity song?
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, you should look it up. It's really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, my impression of making a Pelican record is that it's a long process. And is that true?
The thing that I've learned, particularly in the process of this album and perhaps the album before it, is that we don't really know how to write a Pelican record. I feel like when you're young, you're just sort of like this fountain of inspiration, and it's sort of a matter of like trying to harness it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And then as you get older and you have fewer opportunities to get together and make music, it becomes like sort of less I don't want to say less intuitive, because our writing style is really intuitive, but it becomes a lot more arduous to try and carve out the time and to try and figure out what the process is, because the old methods don't work anymore. So it's not like riding a bicycle, writing a Pelican record. It really feels like every time we start up again with the writing, it's like writing a new rule book and then kind of like filling that in before we can figure out how to take the next steps.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it has turned into a long process now.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I mean, now we've got a stable lineup. This is our first time writing and recording a record with this lineup.
Wait, hold on a second.
Theoretically.
So wait, hold on. You have a different lineup now?
Well, Dallas joined the band in 2012,
right,
and we recorded Forever Becoming in 2013. So he recorded that record with us.
Yes.
But at the moment that he joined the band, the record was mostly finished in terms of the writing.
Okay.
So, and that was a process where we had to figure out how to write a record between Brian and myself and Larry. And that was an iteration of the band that had not written together before. And then we entered that same process again with Dallas, because he was a new voice in the mix and a new, he brings an entirely different flavor to the band that we didn't have before. So it was kind of like that all over again, just sort of like starting from square one and figuring out like, what is it that this iteration of Pelican sounds like, and how do we manifest that through our writing?
All right, now I'm clear. Okay, because I got scared for a second that Dallas was no longer playing with you guys.
Oh, no. Fuck yeah, he is.
Okay, great. Yeah, because having that guy on board, I think his abilities are, pretty superlative. I mean, he's like an incredible player. And, I'm excited to hear, for what it sounds like, he's been, a welcome part of the process then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he, in a way, because his brain is a lot, I think one of the things that was challenging for Brian and I to write a record is like, what are the, I don't always know the terminology for it. I think Brian and I are both chaotic good.
Oh, this is like some like Dungeons and Dragons stuff we're talking here.
I don't remember what these things are called. There's like this quad field or whatever. But anyways, like Brian and I are both like have this creativity that is a little bit like unbridled. Mm-hmm. And the balance in the band was always brought out by Larry and Laurent, who were really like, if you spend time with Laurent, you'll see that he's jotting things down in a notebook all the time because he's trying to keep his thoughts organized.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
They are kind of like the grand editors, the people that like bring things into focus and like organize them. So that was one of the challenges with Forever Becoming, is that with Brian and I being the dominant writers, it was kind of like I think Larry was really struggling to rein us in, and we kept like kind of spinning out in all these directions, and I would bring in these like 15-minute long songs where, you know, like maybe a third of the parts worked. And Larry was able to bring it into focus or whatever. But what was good about Dallas was that he has that same sort of organized mentality. So he was able to help restore the balance in the band. So he really spearheaded the process. He put together a whole working method that involved like collecting riffs and putting them in a Dropbox and then like organizing demos. And I think without that, we might have spiraled out into the wilderness for a little bit longer before we were able to bring it into focus. So not only did he bring like his own stylistic tendencies and his own riffs to the mix, he also kind of like spearheaded the entire process.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to check that out.
Yeah.
So proximity at this stage of the game, since you guys have been operating, I know Larry still lives out in LA, and
yeah.
How is all of that? Have you sorted that all out over the last few years? Because I know that was like I can't even imagine like that sort of operation really.
Yeah, that's another thing that kind of slowed us down is like we had it figured out for a long time because Larry and Brian moved out to LA in 2006, and we managed to write, you know, and record City of Echoes and What We All Come to Need, our third and fourth record, as a long distance band. But then in 2010, after the tour cycle for What We All Come to Need, we stopped touring full time. We became kind of like a part-time band, and the process of writing slowed down as a result of that. And then since Forever Becoming, our last album, I became a dad shortly before that, and then since then, both Larry and Dallas have become dads. So really trying to carve out time for the band became a little bit more complex.
Right.
And what we found is every time we were together, the creativity flew really quickly. Like we were coming up, every time we tour, we have a really easy time coming up with stuff, like just sort of jamming at sound check and like kind of like in between songs at practice. And I think early in the process, we thought, oh, cool, well, we'll just keep setting up tours and then like the songs will happen. But then like, because everybody's got kids and because everybody's got jobs, it's sort of like we'd think like, okay, we'll set up this tour and then we'll have time to write before it. And then, you know, somebody misses a flight or somebody like can't get the day off work. And then suddenly we have like 1 or 2 days to practice before the tour. And all we have time for is to work on the set.
Right.
And so I think we invested a lot more hope in our ability to write in that method. And eventually we realized that wasn't going to work and we were going to have to carve out time to write outside of touring. Unfortunately, that lesson didn't sink in earlier than it did. But fortunately, by the time that we got to that point, we had amassed a large amount of stuff that we could work on. And so we had the material. We just hadn't like sat down and really worked through it.
Where did you record this new record?
We did a week at Electrical Audio, and then a couple weeks later we went in to Decade Studios and did overdubs.
Where is
and
that?
all the track
Is that in Chicago?
That's also in Chicago. Okay. Yeah, and that was all with Sanford Parker, and then Matt Bayless mixed it.
Oh, cool.
In Seattle.
Right on. Yeah, I haven't heard from Matt Bayless as a mastering guy in a while.
Yeah, he mixed it. Ed Brooks mastered it.
Let me make a note here. Okay, let's see. 1329. I have to cut that out so I don't sound like a jerk off. Okay, great.
Yeah, we had never. That was one of the things is we had never worked with Matt, and I think we're all like huge fans of his work, and for a long time. We almost did it on the last record, but for a long time we floated the idea of just like getting somebody to mix the record that didn't track it. That's something we've never done before. And I think we all like the idea of getting like an objective set of ears on the material after we were done working on it. And we couldn't think of anyone better than Matt Bayless for that because we've never worked with him and love his mixes. I'm
actually surprised you guys never worked with him because I mean, Matt was like, had recorded and mixed like so many great records, like the Botch records, the ISIS records he did. It's funny. I really am surprised you guys never worked with Matt before.
Yeah, honestly, me too. And that's like one of the things that was so natural about it was that he's part of the extended Hydra Head family that we're still sort of like spiraling around in our own way. So it seemed like such a natural fit. And Sanford too, of course. I mean, we've done a number of recordings with him over the years, and we just wanted to do something that did justice to the material, which I think it's a really visceral and heavy set of material. So we wanted somebody that knew how to capture those tones, but then also somebody that we felt like completely comfortable with.
Yeah, I've worked with Sanford before. He did the Tombs record, All Empires Fall, the EP that came out a few years ago. And it's great working with that guy, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the idea of, and I've never done this myself, of having a different mixer on board than the guy who actually tracked everything, because it's almost like if you're writing like a piece and having someone edit your material with a fresh new set of eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And it's something I've wanted to do, but just budgetary reasons, thus far, we haven't been able to do anything like that. So, yeah, I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, it just and I think it puts less pressure on the recording engineer too. It's more just about capturing good tones, and you don't have to think so much about what you are going to do with these finished tracks. It's really just like get the best sounds, get all of the material, compiled together, and the best takes of everything, and then wash your hands of it.
Now, I
didn't talk to Sanford about it. I don't know if he was comfortable with it in that same way that I was, but I just feel like that must be cool in a way, you know?
I can see that. Now, this is something that's more of an open-ended kind of question where a lot of times I think about instrumental music, and like from my process, I write lyrics and all these other things, and there's a whole narrative that is in my head when I create the music. But Pelican and also RLYR and your other solo material is without any vocals, okay? So is there any kind of narrative that you have, like when you're writing the songs? Like, is there any sort of, storyline trajectory that is emotional, or some kind of, feeling, or, cinematic, like sort of idea that you're working with? Because the songs lend themselves to that sort of thing. They feel like there's like stories being told in the songs.
Sort of, but at the same time, I wouldn't say that it's anything like, there's not like an explicit story or an explicit meaning to any of the stuff that I have in mind, or that we have in mind. Right. I don't think. I think it's more like we start from a musical idea, and then there's a lot of trying to figure out where it wants to go on its own. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a great deal of pouring our own feelings and our own thoughts and our own emotions into that. It's kind of, like I said earlier, it's sort of an intuitive process, but a lot of it is just listening to the song itself and trying to figure out where it seems to want to go. And then kind of like figuring out the meaning in retrospect. In some cases, like I'll have like a really distinct idea early on of what it means emotionally and try to manifest that. But I think for the most part, it's a pretty open-ended process, and it just sort of reveals itself over time.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by purely instrumental bands, because it's something that, maybe I should explore that at some point in my life too. It's an interesting concept to me.
I'm sure that you would come up with really interesting stuff. I mean, like,
maybe
it's just I have a lot of faith in you musically.
Thanks.
But I think that it also lends itself to things that, like, I was a pretty inarticulate teenager, and perhaps I still am as an adult. And I think that it's a mode of expression where you can express things that maybe you wouldn't be able to find the words for, or perhaps there aren't words for them.
Mm-hmm.
Just like this. I think that filmmakers do this too. They're able to express things about humanity that go much deeper than something that you'd be able to express with language.
Right.
Because it's just an entirely different medium. And you know, bands that have lyrics do that too. You know, there's obviously like a lot of depth of meaning in the music behind the vocals, and poetry. I mean, like combining words in different and interesting ways. But yeah, this is just like the medium that has sort of lent itself to the way that I self-express.
Now, according to my research, Pelican formed in 2001. Okay. Now, that's just a couple years shy of 2 decades of being in operation.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
It is weird. You know what else is weird is that you and I met in 2009, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's like 10 years ago. It feels longer, though, for some reason.
It feels longer. It also feels shorter.
Yeah, there's that weird time sort of concepts that we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I saw St. Vincent, who's a musician I really like. She wrote some essay about her. I don't know if it was her first record or her second record. I guess it came out like 10 years ago, and she didn't even realize that it had been 10 years until she saw people talking about it on social media. She wrote this essay. Like the intro to it is talking about the elasticity of time. And that was something that really resonated with me. That like, I think especially like after you have kids, it becomes really strange trying to tell time, because time, you know, as you get older, it goes quicker because each day, you know, percentage wise, just like as a fraction of your life, it's a shorter period of time than it was when you were younger.
Yeah, definitely.
But then when you have kids too, like there's this thing where like everything both speeds up and slows down at the same time, because you become really obsessed with minutia. Like the minutia of every day takes up so much more of your attention.
Yeah, I could dig that.
But then also you blink and your kid is like fucking, you know, my first kid is going to turn 7 this summer. And it's like, how is that possible?
Wow.
I remember when he was like a baby.
I remember when you had the first kid, and I was like, oh, that felt like 2 months ago.
Yeah, know? Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's been 20 years that we've been a band, and that range of time, because we started in 2000. I think our first release came out in 2001.
Okay.
We were a band for quite a while before we recorded anything. Not quite a while. I mean, a year isn't that long comparative to other bands. But yeah, I mean, it's coming up on 20 years. And when I think about how old bands seemed when I was first getting into music, like bands that were 10 years old seemed ancient. Yeah. Like ancient history.
Oh, totally. Well, that's actually leading up to another thing I wanted to ask you about, which was just the changing role of the band, like over these last 2 decades, like for you, like you know, personally, because I mean, the way you approach the band now is different than when it was 20 years ago, and you know, I'm assuming the space, like the real estate that the band takes up in your life, is probably different now than it was 20 years ago.
It is, in terms of how much time there is to dedicate to the band, but I feel very much like it hasn't changed. Its import hasn't changed in our lives. Right. And what we get out of it hasn't changed. It's just harder. And I think a lot of people, they're like, I can't believe that you still do the band. You know, like people that are not involved in music or are less involved in the process. They're like, it just seems really hard to do a band, you know, when you've got jobs and kids and all that stuff. And it is. It's way harder. but I feel like there's this drive to make it happen because it occupies such a central and important part in our lives. And I think we would all go crazy if we didn't have this outlet. for our creativity.
Well, I mean, I mean, the testament to that is the fact that in addition to Pelican, you also have a whole other band that you do, and this other material that you're putting out. So I mean, obviously, you're still compelled to make music, and probably won't ever stop, really, right?
Yeah, and I think RLYR really started out of like this drive to have band practice on a regular basis, because that came together really because I mean, Steven and I we had never played together, and Keith Utek from Utek Records invited us to do an improv duo at Utek Festival in Milwaukee. And I kind of knew Steven through Locrian, but I didn't know him personally. And like, we kind of like got on the phone together and was like, I don't know, you want to do this? And we both, I wouldn't say that we were gung ho about it, but we were both like, yeah, let's try it. Let's put it out there and see what happens. And it was just so fun playing music with him and like getting in a room with somebody and playing that it was like, yeah, let's see where else we can take this. And and that's really like, I think it's helped keep me sane, just being able to play music every week, because probably at this point, like the distance between Pelican activities probably would be driving me nuts. And I know Larry has another band and Brian has another band now. And I think that's part of like what is making it a little bit more feasible for us, is that we're able to continue honing our talents in these other outlets. And it kind of like staves off the insatiable hunger that might drive us nuts otherwise.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than not doing what you're actually supposed to be doing in life. You know what I mean? And you probably met people too. You probably had people that that I'm not going to do bands anymore. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to do anything else. And then it's just like, why put a period there? You know what I mean? It's like, why say that it's over? Because why does it have to be over? You can just continue doing things on your own terms. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's just hard. And it gets, I think what a lot of those people don't realize, and I've seen it happen to people, where they get so frustrated by the bullshit involved in playing music, whether it be you have to face apathy, but quite potentially. I mean, like a lot of my projects I put out, and I feel like people are very apathetic about them, and it's stuff that matters a lot to me. And I see that happen to other people too, where it's just like they put so much of themselves into this thing and either come up against apathy or perceived apathy. And it takes so much work to make records or to make songs or to make band practice happen. And then, to have it not work out, like people totally burn out on it. And then they're like, throw up their arms and say, fuck it, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to listen to records at home and that'll be enough. And then 3 years pass and they don't know how to get back into it. And they still have that desire to create, but it's become an even more difficult avenue to traverse.
Yeah. I mean, I have a similar approach to it. I mean, it's, I guess the bottom line with all this is just don't stop. I mean, and then you can impose that onto every other thing that you do out there. If you're, even if you're not into music, if you're into whatever art, drawing, sketching, making knives or whatever, and it's like, just don't stop doing it. Just keep doing it, because when you stop is like kind of like when it's the end of the line. Like you kind of fail. You don't fail until you actually stop, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. So all you kids listening, don't stop.
Yeah, don't stop.
It fucking sucks and it's frustrating and it's hard, but it's better than not having it in your life.
Is Pelican going to tour on this record?
Yeah, we're going to be in your city on June 24th.
Excellent. I celebrate that. I'm looking forward to it.
So by the time this episode comes out, we've already announced a 10-day East Coast tour. Mm-hmm. And by the time this comes out, we'll have another 4 dates in the Midwest in September, and then 2 weeks in Europe in October.
That's great.
We can only tour in these small chunks because of our jobs and our home lives, but I'm trying to develop like kind of like a 2-3 year plan where we hit as many parts of the States and as many parts of the rest of the world as we possibly can in like little chunks. So I kind of have like a whole game plan mapped out in the notes app on my phone. Nice. And if we stick to it, we'll cover a lot of ground.
No, I think that's a very good way of doing it. I mean, even like that's kind of how I've been looking at things too. I mean, some parts of this country, no offense to anyone who lives in those parts, but it's tough traveling through there in a mid to small size band where you're not playing in front of thousands of people every night, and to get from the East Coast to the West Coast is a lot of ground to cover, and financially it's hard, so it's good to have these strikes, scheduled out like that. I like that idea.
Yeah, and we're very lucky that we have both Chicago and LA as home bases, because that means, like, for one, Chicago's in the middle of the country, or relatively. So there's like different loops that we can take starting from Chicago where we're able to cover territory in 2 weeks. And then from LA, like, obviously we can do the West Coast, even though it's a little bit more stretched out.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's a game plan. We're going to figure it all out. We're going to try and hit everywhere that we can.
I always thought Chicago would be a good place to be based if you were a band for that reason,
Well, there's a reason we have such a rich tradition of indie bands here.
No, definitely. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at. I was like, when I was, just in the early 90s when I was really getting into, Big Black and the touch and go bands and all that sort of stuff. I was like, yeah, the Midwest is like awesome, to be a band because you're in the sort of center of everything,
Yeah, and people are trained to like good music because there's so much good music from here.
Yeah, there is. Some of my favorite bands, Tar. Tar.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, the Jesus Lizard are sort of a Chicago band, I guess.
They've been pretty accepted as a Chicago band.
Yeah.
They do well here.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you see that most recent Jesus Lizard?
I haven't seen them. I haven't seen them in the new age of Jesus Lizard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've only seen them back in the 90s, and they have always been, I think, one of the most incredible live bands like I've ever seen.
Yeah, they're fucking awesome. It's just unbelievable. It was notable seeing them in, I guess it must have been last year, 2018, because I think like finally the world has changed, and there's so much testosterone in Jesus Lizard. I guess like I'd never been like as dialed in on how masculine the band was until seeing them in that context.
Really?
I was like, they kind of like they fit into the world differently now, I think, than they used to.
Okay.
Not in a bad way, No,
I should go see
I feel like
them.
if they came out now, it probably would be perceived a lot differently than it was at the time.
Yeah, because I mean the records. The whole vibe of that era is a lot different than now, and they were couched within like a very specific scene and a very specific sound that may have detracted from the masculinity of the band, like you were just saying, how masculine they seem now.
It's different now for sure.
Yeah, so I
and it's not only because he walks out on stage and whips his dick out, but that's definitely part of it.
That's awesome that he still does that, actually.
Yeah, the last time they came through before this most recent time, he came out and stage dove right away and very badly injured himself. And then next night he came out and like was trying to play the set in a chair because he was in so much pain. Like he was trying to perform sitting down, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. And then like he fucking stage dove again. And it's like, God, this guy's fucking going to die.
And David Yau's not a young man. He's not a young man either.
No, not at all. I remember there was a great interview with him in the New York Times right before this last run where they were like, "Are you gonna fucking go crazy?" Like, and he was like, "No, like I'm gonna try and take it easy. I feel older now. Like I had to do it." He talked about like his workout routine getting ready for the tour because it was like going to be so strenuous comparative to his day-to-day life. And yeah, I mean, he walked out on stage and fucking stage dove.
Damn.
there's just like there's no dialing it back. You know what I mean? That's another thing that's kind of dangerous about getting older playing music is like, once you establish these patterns, it might be hard to get out of them. That's something I worry about, the physicality of performing and getting older, that it might really become more difficult as the years go by.
Well, I mean, there's another gentleman, our mutual friend Eugene Robinson, who, he's older than me, man, and he's pushing it harder than ever, live. And, you just got to take care of yourself. That's really what it comes down to, I guess, Yeah,
RLYR did 3 shows with them. I guess that was last year.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was good to reconnect with them.
Yeah, Oxbow's great. Another great
phenomenal
live band.
band.
Great live and on record, too. So after this Pelican stuff is out, is there any more plans for RLYR to do anything?
Yeah, so we're, I would say about halfway through writing another record. We have 2 songs that we've been playing live regularly, and 1 song that we played live, but then we took it back to the drawing board, and then 2 other songs that were like sort of halfway through.
It's interesting. There's definitely, when you listen to the band, and I didn't know that Steven from Locrian was in the band when I first heard the music, but it has, like I said, there's like a thing that it sounds like Pelican and Locrian. I mean, without maybe the synths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's
it's a lot brighter and more melodic.
Yeah.
I think like when I'm just hanging out playing guitar, that's sort of the direction that I tend to go in. And so that's sort of what's manifested out of that particular group of players. And like, I mean, we brought Colin into the mix after those initial rehearsals, and Colin is definitely from like that, like power pop mentality.
Mm-hmm. I also noticed that there was some tremolo picking on some of the earlier stuff you did too.
Yeah, there's more of that now.
Nice.
In fact, like I've that's something that I've been sort of like learning how to do finally.
Yeah, it suits you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been an uphill learning curve, but
there's a question.
I learned it from watching you.
Oh, really? So. Oh, wow. Hey, then you know exactly how not to do it. How to get carpal tunnel syndrome and back problems and things like that. Yeah.
I remember Adam from Caven trying to teach me this like this chugging technique, like this galloping technique or whatever, where you hold the pick sideways.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, that way there's less resistance from the string. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out how the fuck he does it. Like, I mean, that must have been 13 years ago, and I still can't figure out how he does it. I just have to go flat picking and like, so some of these things that I've learned from other people just don't pay off.
Yeah, that's the way Kerry King does the muted palm muting with that sort of angle on the picking.
Yeah.
And Eric Rutan does the same thing too. And it's
I can't fucking do it for the life of me. I can't figure it out.
A couple more, 10,000 hours, and you'll be an expert.
At least I'm almost there with the tremolo picking.
So now I know that you're still vegan, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want to know if you've tried that Impossible Burger. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you tried that?
This is a hard-hitting podcast.
It is a hard-hitting podcast, man. We're getting to the brass tacks now here,
Getting into the deep shit here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried the Impossible Burger.
I haven't. Because I eat meat, but so what's your take on it, man?
Well, you got to understand, I've been vegan since 1996.
Okay.
1995. So well over half my life at this point. Mm-hmm. And for the life of me, I can't remember what meat tastes like. Okay. So the pitch that it tastes like meat, that means nothing to me. I do enjoy the Impossible Burger. I mentioned that because I know that's part of their sales pitch or whatever, is like, it tastes like meat, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But to me, that means nothing. Like, you could fucking, it tastes good. I've had stomach aches after eating it in the past, but I don't know, I'm not sure whether that's just like other mitigating factors or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. It's good. It's fine. Anything that's going to like, show up on the menu at these fast food restaurants, because I know that Burger King is working with them now, and they have them at the White Castle up the street from my house. Anything that's going to show up on those menus and potentially move people away from a meat-based diet, which is fucking horrible for both the environment and their bodies, not to mention, the workers in the meat factories and the animals, is a great thing,
Okay. Yeah.
Because people need to move away from a meat-dependent diet for all of those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been curious about that because I see it, and I see it like in Whole Foods, and I see it in some of these places, and I don't trust it when I look at it. When I look into the package, I'm like, this looks like meat. Maybe they're just saying that it's meat.
You know what you're thinking of? You're thinking of the Beyond Burger.
The Beyond Burger, that's it. Okay, yeah. So they're two different things.
The Impossible Burger is not available commercially.
Okay.
It's only available at restaurants that have partnered with the company.
Got it.
The Beyond Burger, that's something I actually like. It does look like meat. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it tastes like meat. To me, it reminds me of beets in a weird way, but then with like a kind of like, I don't know, veggie burger texture or whatever. But they grill well. They taste great. I'm an advocate for them.
Now, what is actually in that? I mean, that's my thing is the ingredients, because it's like
Well, it is lab stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's all plant based. I mean, like I think pea protein is the dominant ingredient, which is also what they put in that Daya cheese. That stuff's also made out of pea protein. So pea protein is being used by scientists to create this stuff.
Interesting.
These weird foods.
Yeah. For me, man, I just like to, and I'm not like really a big meat eater, honestly. It's like, I go days without eating meat. Like mostly I eat like blended vegetables and olive oil and nuts and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a very natural diet to eat meat sparingly.
Yeah.
That's
well, that's
how
the point.
Human body is designed.
Well, that's kind of like I've always fancied myself sort of a caveman as it is, so why not eat like a caveman, and that's kind of like my whole thing with that, with like not a lot of meat and everything.
Well, that's very responsible, which I think is in keeping with your character.
Oh, thanks, man. All right, so we've diverged a little bit here and went down a left-hand path.
Are you taking notes or something?
No, I am. I have my notebook out about what to do and not to do here with my a pseudo vegan diet. Okay, so
no, I think if it weren't for the human rights and the animal rights concerns, maybe I would eat meat. But I feel like for me, those things outweigh, because I would never be able to for me, I couldn't rationalize killing an animal. I would never be able to do it. So right. I don't think that it's my right to eat them. But then also having researched the way the human rights violations go down in those factories, it's unconscionable.
No, I totally get that, man. Definitely.
A lot of those factories are staffed by illegal aliens, mm-hmm. and then they're not only treated like shit, they're in extremely dangerous working conditions, and a lot of the sterilization is done with extremely hot water. And people get burned and scalded all the time. And then because they're illegal aliens, they just turn them away. They just toss them away like rubbish because they can't, take care of them for fear of, being brought up on labor violations.
Yeah. So, that's definitely, the right way to look at things for sure, and, for me though, it's just that's part of my diet. But like I said, I try to not eat. I've been very mindful about how much meat I consume.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get all preachy on you.
No, man. No, I know that it's an important thing for you. That's why I want to talk about it.
I just don't ever preach about it, so I'm out of character right now.
Well, that's what you said. This is a hard-hitting show that we're on here, so.
It's true.
It's a hard-hitting podcast, and we're getting into it now. So this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Nighttime Stories. What's the official release date on that record?
It's coming out on June 7th.
Okay, what label's putting that out?
Southern Lord.
Okay, great. You guys working with them again. Awesome.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. And there's tour dates and all this stuff that's being announced. If people want to, find you guys online, like what's your website and social media and all that kind of stuff?
I believe that our website is pelicansong.com, like Pelican, SONG.com. And then there's links to all our relevant social media websites on there.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate your generosity with your time, Trevor, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys when you come out here.
Yeah, please come out. It would be good to see you.
Definitely, man. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Metal Matters, a Gimme Radio weekly podcast. Tune in next week and see what we have in store for you. The show is available on all streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, etc. Also, be sure to check out Gimme Radio, streaming on the web, iOS, or Android, for one of the best metal communities, exclusive merch, interviews with artists, and so much more. I'll catch you guys next week. Take care.